Hello, everyone. Welcome back once again. Today we have a very special friend with us here, Nick Taimurodo, and he's going to be sharing with us a topic that I think is going to interest many of you. It's basically magic, right, Nick?
The actual real thing. So many times we're always shown, many different examples of magic in the world, even things that are either being done to us or things that we can do ourselves, as well as, what we always, imagine it to be, like, including things in, like, doing little rituals. Like, people always have their tiny little habits and notions, like, make sure to always, light a candle and clap 3 times. And that's just an example. Or maybe even, do whatever. And of course, these things are always meant to be like, to bring good luck, prosperity, love, truth, whatever it is that you're doing it for, and deep down, we feel that we have an effect or doing something to help along. But even still, that's basically what I'm going to help talk about, like how to make all this stuff work. Because more often than not, we're always talking about manifesting, bringing things into our lives, but oftentimes we're not really taught properly how to do it, or we're taught maybe in a subpar way, or in a way that kind of always gives us mixed results. People saying, oh yeah, this works, I brought so much stuff in my life. Other people are saying like, oh, I tried, I've been doing that for months, nothing ever happened, I'm still kind of stuck in the same place, right? Mm-hmm. And that could be for one reason or another. So yeah, what I'm hoping to bring along is to how to actually do this stuff properly, and or at least get yourself started. I will always encourage, to get into proper study and look up different mentors, and even start reading some material on it too. And not, of course, not just knowing it as well, because that's part of the, may only be like one part of it, but also actually doing it too. And actually getting into the practice of doing it daily.
Right. Because that's where the most power is, right? Is to getting into that daily flow of using it.
Yeah. And more often than not, that's actually where your true knowledge on, especially when it comes to magic, is going to come in on, right? Because you can know protocol, you can know like, oh yeah, I know how to do that spell, I know how to do that ritual, I know how to do this, I know how to do that. But if you never do it, then how can you truly know that it works? How can you truly tap into it? So yeah, of course, yeah. First, it's going to be all about knowing the protocol at first, but once you start knowing things, well, now you start by putting them into practice, right?
Yeah.
Put it into the subconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to go over that definitely, as to like how this stuff works, right? How does our mind interface with the rest of the universe? How do things manifest? Because yeah, we're told our minds have that power to manipulate the universe around us, but how exactly? Because people sometimes will like think super hard, be like, oh, I want this to manifest, or they'll be thinking about something, and then sometimes it just appears and be like, oh, look at that, my mind made that up. Others will like deliberately try to focus on it and be like, trying to make that appear, but it's not working. Oh, this shit's not working. Well, like, was it bullshit the whole time? What's going on? Mm-hmm. So yeah, hoping to go through this whole thing to try to explain like how it works and how you can utilize it to your advantage.
Okay.
So yeah, so first thing I do want to go over before we start getting into, to the actual mechanics of it as to how magic works is, when it comes to studying the esoteric, and this is something that I've learned from Christopher Campbell on the Syncretism Academy, awesome guy. He passed down his knowledge when it comes to studying the esoteric flame, and this is my own words on it too, is that there's people on it. There is mysticism or mystics, and there's occultism or occultists. Now, I'm sure many people probably have heard those two terms, kind of exchange them, synonymously with each other. And while, yes, they are similar in many respects, but they do things a little bit different. So mysticism is more about being receptive, receiving, knowing things, right? So things like astrology, astrotheology, philosophy, meditation, those type of things, right? That's kind of in a nutshell, but generally those things, right? So you know things, you understand them, you can see them and you recognize them. Whereas occultism is more about projection, doing, applying, actually putting what you have into action as well. So the first thing I will always say to anyone before they start getting into the occult or becoming a magician and properly using magic to its fullest extent is first you must learn how to be a mystic first before you become an occultist. Reason being is that being a mystic, well, like I mentioned before, it allows you to understand the flame as opposed to just immediately using it. Think of it as before you start learning how to drive, before you start driving a car, you got to learn how to drive it. So obviously how the car works in of itself, at least to the extent of being able to drive it. Sure, maybe maintain it too. But also, you know the rules of the road, right? Do you drive on the left side of the lane, right side? What's the speed limit? Because, and right of way, because, if you go too fast, you lose control, then you skid around the corner, then you ran right into the side of someone's house and maybe run over, little Timmy playing in the yard or something. Obviously, you want to avoid that kind of tragedy. But it's not just even that, it's also knowing the significance of these things. Like, for example, as the old axiom that goes, as above, so below, as without, so within. And so in astrology, in astrotheology too, we know, we study these things and we learn to recognize them as well. We learn to recognize, the aspects of, say, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Mercury, the Sun, Moon, etc. But another important reason as to why we need to learn to be a mystic first, especially a mystic, is because in mysticism, we also learn astrology. Now, astrology has been taught many times, it's the mother of all sciences, right? It is electromagnetism. And of course, when you do magic, what are you going to be manipulating? The electromagnetic mechanics of the universe around you. So how can you manipulate them if you don't know them, right? Mm-hmm. And magic, though this may sound like an oxymoron to some people, is another form of science, right? So how can you, and astrology and magic very closely linked. You, like most people who are not experiencing this, may be surprised at how often they're going to be interlinking between the two. And oftentimes it becomes easier when you do. Yeah, sure, there are some things you can probably do that, may not directly involve astrology. But most of those times, those are very specific things or very, very simple things.
Right.
But if you really want to...
Not to interrupt your flow, but you introduced us to that app where you do certain rituals during certain times of the day, depending upon where the planets are, or even specific days themselves.
Yeah, definitely, because you have the planetary days. So Sundays for the sun, Monday for Moon Day, Tuesday for Mars, Wednesday for Mercury, Thursday for Jupiter, Friday for Venus, and Saturday for Saturn. And of course, even within those days, we have the planetary hours. Now, of course, because of how that works, generally speaking, it's better to have a calculator, like an app. The one that I recommended was, and I'm only recommending it because I haven't found a better one, but the one I would recommend is Planetary Times. You can find that on the Google Play Store. I don't know if it's on the Apple Play Store, but regardless of whether it's that one or another one, you can even search one online for one. Find a planetary calculator or hour calculator, and there you go. You can learn to utilize those powers, because when it comes to utilizing them, we can go over this later, but yeah, you have the day, and then you have it modified, or maybe kind of used as what is it you're targeting. So if you want to mix the power of Mars, maybe with Mercury, right? So day of Mars, you want to target something with Mercurial, so you wait for the hour of Mercury. Or maybe you want to go pure one thing, so you do it on the day of whatever you want to use, and then the same hour. But anyhow, that's one big example why it's important to know astrology as well. And of course, I would also say that it's also important to learn astrotheology. Now astrotheology astrology also does this too when it comes to archetypes, which, even as an astrologer, you already start to work with these as well. But definitely as a magician, you are definitely going to be working with these things, because eventually we're also going to get into the law of correspondences as well. We'll get more into that later, but recognizing the archetypes is vitally important. And astrotheology not only will go deeper into those archetypes, but also allow you to, or give you an opportunity at the very least, to develop a kind of reverence for them, right? Allows you to build up that emotional connection to them and respect as well. You can still do that with just astrology, but astrotheology goes deeper in on that. And of course, you learn more as well from astrotheology, me too. And of course, you got other things like meditation, which is also one of the biggest vital skills, whether you want to stick to being a mystic or you want to go occultist. And also another thing is as well, like these two roles are not mutually exclusive, right? Like some days, some people can prefer to be one over the other. Some people prefer to go in between, like just whatever suits them better. Some days you want to be more of a mystic, other days you want to be more of an occultist, like whatever suits you better. But regardless, it's still important to learn to understand the flame then before you start getting into the actual thing when it comes to the occult. So yeah. So next, of course, now that we got that out of the way, next we're going to start talking about the actual thing. So magic. So what is it exactly? Right? And depending on like who you ask, this could have any number of understanding or perspectives. Like magic can be both, like someone could say it's the essence of the universe, electromagnetism, which it is, absolutely. Some can view it as an act, like actually doing something, which that is too. And as well as some people can also say, oh, it's sleight of hand because it's stage magic. Well, that's a different kind of magic, but even still, or it can be an experience too. Like you have like a wonderful experience, like say for example, you go to the north and you see the northern lights. It's a very magical experience, which suppose it is. But in this context, magic would be more, we're going to be talking about of course, the act as well. And of course, those other experiences as well, and those other things that I mentioned will definitely still play a part. Maybe not so much sleight of hand, but that depends what you do specifically. So now what we're going to talk about next is the mind. And of course, much like in astrology and Aries, everything begins in the mind, right? So what we start thinking, what we say, is going to have a massive effect as to what manifests or what doesn't manifest, right? So in the context of magic with the mind, there's going to be two parts, right? Most people are probably familiar with these concepts. There's the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Conscious mind is like the left brain, rational, masculine, logical side of thinking. It's the one that's aware, the one that makes all the conscious decisions, the one that sort of like leads you throughout the day. Whereas the right brain, feminine, it's the subconscious, which is the right brain, feminine, intuitive, creative aspect, the emotional side, right? Now, both of these parts play a huge role. You cannot really have one without the other if you want to have a successful practice. So, generally speaking, when it comes to manifesting magic, basically the whole process is much like a self-hypnosis, subliminal programming of one's own subconscious in order for it to bring out the manifestation which desired. So when we do these rituals, these grand rituals, right? When people think rituals, and they wouldn't necessarily be wrong, we think of these grand gestures, these grand dramas where we draw a circle, we set up a candle of a specific color, we wear certain robes, we put on a hood or we don't put on a hood. We do certain actions. We hold things in the right hand or maybe the left hand. We draw sigils. We use certain symbolism. All of these things are all designed and all used in order to make an impression on the subconscious. When the subconscious receives these impressions, when they receive these impressions, that's when they start carrying it out later. So the conscious mind will make the decision, will lead the action and give that instruction, which in turn carries out. So that's at least a basic understanding of how that would work. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know I've talked about it numerous times.
Yeah, you don't want to miss any important points, right? Yeah, magic is like very particular, right? Like
it is.
Like you could, if you're not exacting in your ritual or in explaining even how it works, it's not going to have as much potency.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to the two different aspects of the mind, you can think of them almost as, there's also another way where astrotheology can come into play when it comes to our internal energies. So everyone, both men and women, we all have a masculine and feminine aspect, right? We have the internal Adam. You can also call it like the internal Adam or the internal husband versus the internal Eve or the internal wife. Both of these aspects are always constantly at play within us, and especially in magic, they definitely play a role in there too. Because in order for creation to happen, you need to have both of those aspects come together. Like neither one of them can create without the other. Sure, at most, maybe one of them alone might be able to create something very small, but it's not going to be in any significant fashion, right? It's like, oh yeah, you made a crumb. What are you going to do with that crumb? Not much. It's just kind of there. But if you really want to make something that's really substantial, that will actually get there, you need both. Like neither one can reach heaven without the other. Some would say like, because of and this is still true. The feminine aspect does have that connection to that divine. Fine. However, the thing is she cannot get there on her own. She can see heaven beyond yonder, but she cannot see what's in front of her. So like, yeah, she knows heaven's there. She can see it. She's right there, but she doesn't know how to get there. She can receive the map pieces and the signposts, but she doesn't know how to read them. That's where the masculine aspect comes in, where he, on the other hand, cannot really see heaven. He doesn't know. If it wasn't for her, he wouldn't know heaven's there. He can only see heaven through her. However, he kind of has the opposite problem, where he may not be able to see heaven, but he can see what's in front of him. He can read the signposts and the sign pieces and begin to discern how to get there. Hence, when they come together, that's where they start working together, and of course, that's when they start going to heaven together. When these two aspects are unified, the masculine will start leading the feminine energy to heaven, and they both make it there. They both create something wonderful and beautiful. It's the holy matrimony. And so anyway, and in magic, it's much in a similar sense, where the feminine aspect is she is receptive. She is very receptive. Some could say that she might be a little bit too good at her job, where she receives absolutely everything. She receives the good and the bad, which is why even in Hermeticism, one thing we were constantly told is to guard the gates of her mind, guard the gates of her subconscious. We must always be careful what kind of media we consume, what kind of music we listen to, what we watch, people we talk to, and what we listen to, right? And of course, in this day and age, we're constantly bombarded by so much of this stuff, right? And yeah, and some would say like, oh, if our subconscious is that vulnerable, then we'd be pretty screwed. Well, if that were the case, yeah, we would. But the good thing is, this is where the masculine aspect comes in, because that part of the mind does have the ability to reject. The feminine energy does not have the ability to reject. She constantly receives. Which is why we also it's linked back to the story of the old classical story of the prince or the noble knight rescuing the princess from the tower and then protecting her too, right? Because she's vulnerable. She can't really defend herself, because there's always things coming in trying to go for her for one reason or another. And of course, it's the job of the masculine mind to discern and reject what's bad, and if it's good, you can accept it and let it right in. So when we do ritual, when we do spell work, however we decide to go about it, the whole idea is to pretty much bypass, in a sense, bypass the conscious mind and allow things go into the subconscious. While at the same time, it can also be used in reverse, where if something tries to attack us or try to invade our mind in however way, it allows us to repel it and defend ourselves. Because, without it, we'd be kind of screwed. So yeah, conscious mind, masculine, logical, subconscious, emotional, feminine, creative, intuitive, right? It's, that's how that would work.
The sun and the moon.
Yeah,
Sun's
exactly.
conscious, masculine, the moon's feminine.
Yeah, and the moon being the one, and of course the moon is going to be vital too. Another reason why it's important to know astrology or astrotheology is to understand even the roles of these powers too. So especially sun and moon, the moon is what brings everything in. It's the portal where things enter and manifest. Hence why many times, especially you'll see in things like Wicca or witchcraft, where they have a huge focus on the moon. And of course, there's a reason why. It's what allows things to come in. So when we do magic, one thing as a magician that you're going to be looking to when you really want to do something big or special, you'll be looking at the alignment of the stars, mainly the moon. Like what sign is the moon going to be in? Is she going to be waxing or she can be waning? Because depending on what sign the moon is in, as well as whether it's waning or waxing, can largely determine what kind of magic you can do, or at least what will make it easier to do, right? Because yeah, technically even if you don't match up correspondences, can magic work? Yeah, it can. However, your results are going to mix vary, because oftentimes if you don't, you're going to be swimming against the current. So if you really want to have the best operation or the best practice, you definitely want to keep in mind the alignment of the stars. Probably always heard the phrase of wait for the stars to align, or the stars align in the perfect way for things to happen. Well, yeah, they probably kind of did. And as a magician, this is definitely going to be important, because if you want to have a successful practice, because a lot of it we're going to be working with is synchronicity and using and willing it into existence, as opposed to just waiting for it to happen, or just maybe haphazardly or unwittingly do it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, knowing where the moon is and utilizing that power as coupled with the sign that it's in, and whether it's waxing or waning. And also another thing to talk about waxing and waning is that depending on whether it's not, it will determine what kind of, like I know I already said this, what kind of techniques are you going to be using? Are you going to be using pushing, or are you going to be using pulling? So this can also be viewed as if you want to use white magic for waxing or black magic for waning, which I know some people's ears are going to prick up when they hear black magic, because they'll think bad, evil. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that's not the case. Well, yes, we can definitely we're going to go over black and white magic, but
not always is it so simplistically black as
black and white.
Yeah. Yeah, because because as we'll note that even black magic, even though more often than not, yes, it can be used for harm, and it's very easy to do so, but it's not always bad. You can do it for good. You can do good things. And white magic, yes, it's very easy to do good with it, very easy, but you can still do bad with it. You can almost compare it to as black magic being like a flame, like an actual flame, versus white magic being like a pillow. Yeah, a flame can burn. You can burn down a house, a village. You can hurt someone with it. Second and third degree burns suck. I don't, unless you're a masochist, but we're going to assume that you're not. But of course, it can still provide light, still provide heat, right? It can still show you the way, and still make sure you don't, suffer from hypothermia. For say, if you're in the cold, you can set up a campfire or a bonfire and stay near it, or even a fireplace. Fire can do many amazing things, just as destructive as it can be. And say like a white magic, so a pillow, yeah, it can be soft. You can lay your head on, you can be comfortable for the night, but you can also press it to someone's face and suffocate them with it. Sure, you do have to be I'm not saying you should do this. You do have to be creative and a little niche to do harm with it, but you still could. So it's not like these type of things, it's not strictly good or bad, right? And yeah, so we'll go over like what makes magic black, what makes magic white, right? What one is for vanishing, one is for pulling in.
Okay.
So, next thing I also want to go over before we go any further on discussing magic is, and I think this will be important to develop even throughout your entire time practicing into this, is as well as even skill sets that one should learn to cultivate while they're doing magic as well. So, like I mentioned before, really with the whole concept of how the mind works in relation to magic, how things manifest, why don't things manifest, is because of having things being placed in the subconscious, right? So the first skill that I would highly recommend everyone to start looking into is the skill of self-hypnosis, right? Being like pretty much programming oneself with whatever it is they're trying. And I know for some people that can seem a little bit, daunting or even scary in some cases, because of course, if your mind gets messed with, then of course reality starts to, get a little bit strange, or even, weird or just tumultuous, right? So it's still, and even still, it's something that one should at least learn about, because it's going to be vitally important. Because something I forgot to go over when it comes to the mind as well, and also why sometimes when people try to manifest things and they don't work, or just take so long, or just get very mixed results, is that, like I said, when you're trying to place instructions into the subconscious mind, one of the biggest mistakes that most people make when trying to manifest something and they're wondering why it doesn't manifest is because more often than not, they're still thinking about it. When you're thinking about something, when you're hyper focusing on it, because yes, it's true that we've all heard the saying that when we focus on something, we're going to get to what we focus on. Yes, that's still true. However, what we're not really told more often than not, at least in my experience, is how to focus on it, how to think on it, right? Because when you're thinking about something, yeah, you're generating that charge, right? You're building up that charge in order to bring that in. But however, the thing we have to do next is we have to let it go. Like imagine writing a letter, right? You write your letter, you put it in the envelope, put the sticker on it, you go up to the mailbox and you put it up to it, but you don't let it go. You don't put it in. So when the mailman comes along and tries to pick up the mail, he's not going to take it. He might look at you a little funny, but he's not going to take it. So of course, when we build up that charge during the ritual, when we put our focus, our intent and our emotions, everything into it, yes, we build it up. And afterwards, what we have to do next is we have to let it go, which means to completely forget about it, right? We cannot be like not to focus on it, to take our mind off completely. Because if we can remember something or think about something, like even in the moment, then that means it's not in your subconscious, it's in your conscious mind. And the whole point of doing these things is to plant these things into our subconscious mind. So this is also the reason why hypnosis is such a big thing to learn, because the whole point of hypnosis is to essentially bypass the conscious mind and get directly to the subconscious. And the subconscious is what rules, all our habits as well. Does all the things that we don't have to consciously think about, as well as including, connecting with the rest of the universe as well, to either receive something or to manipulate something to our advantage or to our desire, our design, whatever it is. That's why, that skill is important.
Yeah. What do we have? This is about 70,000 unconscious thoughts per day. 70,000.
Huh.
Wow. And then if you can program, like after you do the ritual and program that into your subconscious, forget about it with your conscious mind, then that will help to manifest it quicker.
Pretty much.
Or even at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, manifestation times can vary from person to person or case by case, really. Obviously it depends on so many different factors, which also include whether or not you're capable of forgetting or not. Yeah. But of course, we got to talk about, like, again, astrology is going to play again the configuration that's currently above, when you did it, what did you use exactly, how did you do it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And even maybe, have you thought about how it could even be different according to each individual's natal chart? Like,
oh, yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone's going to have different challenges, even in life, like even outside of magic, everyone's going to have, different things, right? Some people are going to be nervous speaking in crowds, others not so much. There are some going to be great at certain skill sets, others not so much. So magic absolutely has that. And yeah, everyone has the capability to be a magician, right? Like some people might they'll look at their chart like, oh, hey, I bet I'll be great as a magician, right? Or logo someone say, oh yeah, you're not going to be, you don't have access to being a magician. No, obviously everyone is capable of doing magic, right? Mm-hmm. Like even the average Joe Schmo working 9 to 5 hasn't even heard of astrology, or when if he has, he only heard it in passing, doesn't care for it. Even he's doing.
We're always doing magic, even if we're not consciously aware that we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So of course the difference between, like, I guess some people might ask, it's like, oh, okay, so if we're always doing magic, then, like, does it mean we're all magicians? Not necessarily. It'd be more accurate to say that everyone has the potential to be a magician, but what separates a magician from a non-magician is that a magician or occultist, a practitioner, actively willingly, consciously, knowingly controls their magic, whereas opposed to a non-magician does not, does it unwittingly, or usually has something or someone control their magic, which is more often not what happens with most people, right? Like such examples can include even like politics, for example. Like you have so many people that are so tied into it, right? Like, or even sports teams as well. Like, and these are just the most obvious examples, many examples, but that's definitely a way where that it comes into effect. So next up would be the skill of gnosis. Now, gnosis does have different definitions to it, but in the context of magic and what we're trying to do here is that gnosis is that state of mind that one achieves when they bring their awareness between their conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind obviously is that link to the more ethereal realms, the link behind the veil. And of course, when we do these rituals, we bring ourselves as close as possible. So being able to achieve that gnosis is, of course, very important. So when you're doing a ritual, or you're charging a sigil and you're focusing on it, you're intently bring yourself to that subconscious, because when you're there, you can far more easily plant those instructions. Because the conscious mind acts as a filter, right? You can think about something in your conscious mind, and sometimes it could come about, but sometimes it does not. Most of the time it does not. And this can vary from person to person, because people can be, and it can also be linked to the natal chart, as you mentioned before, as well, like someone's suggestibility, because some people's subconscious are very closely guarded, very closed off. So it's really hard to kind of, instill anything in them. And in many ways, this can be a good thing, especially in today's world where we're bombarded constantly by advertisements, subliminal messaging, and some of which may not be good. Well, not some, most, if not almost all of it's not really, really good at all.
To try to stay out of the city as much as possible, right?
It's definitely a minefield, and and more often than not, some people might think it's like, oh, I'll just ignore it. I'll just cover my eyes, or just kind of focus on something else. And while that may seem the right thing to do at first, at first I thought so too, but actually that's kind of the worst thing to do, because when you do that, when you consciously ignore it, sure, your conscious mind is ignoring it, but your subconscious does not. It is the all-seeing eye, right? So it will constantly receive. So if your conscious mind is not there to protect it, it's going to receive stuff. So it's not the things that you catch that you have to be worried about. It's the things you don't catch you got to be worried about. Because I do know in some, I think it was even like with Facebook at some point, someone pointed out and some kind of banner supposed to represent like the world map or something, I think it was, but hidden in it, you can actually find like the word sex imprinted, like hiding there. Sure, you might not see it right off the bat, but if you put in the right detail or really focus in on it, you'll see it. Oh shit, it's right there. So our conscious minds probably didn't pick up on it, but our subconscious definitely does. So
why do they choose to put like penises and sex and everything? What is the power in that?
So
creation.
Yeah, so because of course the phallus is is pretty much like the funnel that could there's when it comes to this stuff, there's gonna be sex jokes everywhere. You can't get away from it, but so pretty much that phallus is supposed to be like that director of energy, right? It's the one that kind of leads everything. So by virtue of them putting phalluses everywhere, and of course it is for us to our subconscious mind to recognize that as a form of authority. That is where energy is supposed to go. And of course, if our conscious minds don't recognize this, of course we're going to miss it completely, or we might catch it. But the phallus, of course, it can be attributed to many different things. So it's the center, it's the sword, it's the magic wand, right? It's like magic can even be viewed as even that of a hose, where the masculine principle is like the hose itself, and the feminine principle with that energy as well, that emotional, is like the water. So of course the water by itself can kind of goes everywhere, but if it's put through a hose, it's funneled to a specific way. And of course, even all these archetypes and symbols, they're much like tools. And of course, those that are, trying to control the world, and and by extension us, they're trying to use these tools against us, and thus, that's them, being in action as we see them.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course there could probably be other motives as well, like using the phalluses as a way to,
Distract.
kind of distract, put one over us, or in some capacity. I
don't know. It's interesting because like you see all these Disney clips and they put dicks and everything, and then all children do is draw dicks.
Yeah,
like in the back.
yeah, that too. Like, well, it is definitely, I would say, it's involved with magic as well, but even as well, the more sinister aspects of pedophilia, pedivores, all that nasty shit. I'd be no surprised if it's used for that too. What am I talking about? Not surprised. It definitely, most definitely is. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and of course we're talking about all this in Scorpio season, right? Magic and sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, the occult and hidden things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why, like, oftentimes, and we're definitely going over why, like, sex is why it's still a big thing here. Like, the universe is is a dualistic universe. I mean, sure, for those who are syncretists, astrologers know it's so true. Like, it's a 12ness, right? Of course. So you do have the two polarities, white, black, positive, negative, yes, no, red, blue. But of course, there are submodalities too, which is why astrotheology and astrology will teach you that. Still important. Well, again, I will say, be a mystic first. But of course, kind of like in a nutshell, yes. Dual, yes, no. Just to go finish off the list of essential skills before we close off here.
Okay.
So that's gnosis, right? As we covered before, that middle point between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Next, next skill to focus on is, funny enough, is focus and concentration. Because of course, when we do these rituals, we can't always be distracted of whatever else, right? We have to stay on point, keep focusing and directing our own energy, and staying still as well. Even when, say, like activating or charging a sigil that you've created, it's important to be able to stay still and stay focused on it, and to concentrate all your energy in on it, which in turn is going to lead me into my next one, which is visualization. Of course, visualization, most people probably already know about this when it comes to trying to manifest. You try to visualize what you want, which, yeah, absolutely, you're going to be using that a lot when it comes to magic. More often than not, it's actually been noted that those who are very good at visualization oftentimes can be very poor at concentration and focus, and vice versa. Those who are really good at focus and concentration might have some trouble with visualization. But of course, you can develop both of those skills. If someone is good at both, then hey, awesome, you're well on your way. But yeah, visualization, vitally important, because many rituals and many spells will have you either drawing a certain geometric shape, visualizing a certain color, or visualizing yourself in a completely different place. Either way, it's gonna be important, and not just visualizing it mentally and visually, but even including using all of your senses too. So touch, feel, auditory, smell, taste, even. Right? Sometimes taste can be a little bit funny because like, especially when it comes with money magic as well. That's one example, at least. You have to touch the money, you got to see the money, you got to feel the money. I already said touch, smell the money, even taste the money. Not going to taste good, but it really tries to convince your subconscious that you have that, whatever it is you're trying to manifest, as well. And of course, feeling yourself in that moment too. We'll go over more about things like future casting versus, which is another thing that people also mistakenly do when they try to manifest something, which is why they probably never get what they want, even though they're focusing on it like day in, day out. And that's aside from always focusing on it. Yeah, so the last skill that is also vital, and you'll probably definitely learn this in, being a mystic as well, is meditation. So, of course, there are many reasons to meditate, right? There's both, relaxing oneself. There is also trying to figure out inner problems as well, or even just trying to receive information as well, being in that state. That's another reason why when you meditate, you sometimes get flashes. You get like a eureka moment or whatever. Is because you're bringing yourself to that state, that awareness between your conscious mind, which is more in the present now physical reality, where subconscious is more always in the ideal, in the heavens, in the ethereal realms, the distant place where it can receive these things. It may not know what to do with them, but it brings them to you, and you of course have to figure out what to do with them. So of course meditation, and meditation even is going to help you facilitate the other skills of concentration and visualization, which is again still going to be vital in some spell work or rituals that you decide to do. So to quickly summarize, so self-hypnosis, the state of gnosis, focus and concentration, visualization, and meditation. So for anyone who's learning to get into magic, those 5 skills are going to be very important to learn. And if you're already pretty good on those skills, then awesome.
Okay. I have one quick question. What is the difference between self-hypnosis and meditation? Are they similar?
They're definitely similar.
Yeah.
In many ways, where self-hypnosis can really be viewed more as the actual implantation of instruction into the subconscious. Meditation is definitely a way to facilitate that kind of environment for that to happen, which in turn can also lead to gnosis. And also there are different ways to achieve gnosis, at least in the context of magic. So like the primary way would be meditation, putting yourself into a trance.
Okay.
To bring you that. There are other methods include, and mind you, these are just methods that are there. I don't necessarily recommend them. Obviously, the choice will always be down to whoever is listening to this. So first, of course, we have the meditation one, which is probably the one I would recommend first.
Okay.
Then next one is something called the scare method, right? And of course, there are different ways of doing it. And it's depending on your setup and what you have available as well. Is like when you get scared, when you get jump scared, right? Like you get that moment, that freak out, like, oh my God, what the hell? Your conscious mind just disappears for a quick moment. And in that brief moment of gnosis, that's another way to achieve that. I know it doesn't seem too long, but in some cases it can be useful if that's what you wish to do. The third one, again, I'm not recommending this. Do this if you want. Maybe you can do it as an opportunity in case it does happen, is the pain method. So when you start feeling an intense amount of pain, and again, I'm not saying do this, but if you really, really want to, like one way to do it is in ritual, if you're charging a sigil, is that you have your sigil in front of you, have a candle, and then have a flame. Obviously it's lit. So you'll take your hand and put it right over the flame. Yes, it's going to hurt, and that's partly the point, and that's why I don't recommend it. Do it if you really, really want to. And in that moment where your conscious mind's like so distracted by the pain, but where you're still focusing on the sigil, that's another way to bypass that, your conscious mind. The last one, yeah. So, and of course, like if you're going through life and you stub your toe or you trip and you're in a lot of pain, you can use that as an opportunity to manifest what you want and think on that while you're focused on the pain. So there you go.
And then that kind of like takes your mind away from hurting, like being in pain too, right?
And a bit so, yeah, depending on how you go about it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the last method, and again, this one I really don't recommend unless one, you know what you're doing, and two, even then, this can be a little bit risky, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Especially if you don't know things like White Tantra, and if you know what that means, you probably know where I'm going with this. What's usually called the wank method, and yes, it is exactly as it sounds. The masturbatory method as well, because when you achieve that state of orgasm, that's another way of achieving gnosis. And again, especially if you know things about, say, the chrism oil as well, and not wasting it, or just wasting your sexual energy, especially if you don't know White Tantra, don't recommend it, because it can be very harmful to oneself, right? Yeah, and sure, absolutely. If you have a partner with someone, yeah, sex magic, like even including actual sex, yeah, that can still be very powerful. But once again, make sure you know White Tantra first, and make sure you know what you're doing, because if you mess up, it can be very damaging to oneself. And if you know about the chrism oil
Yeah.
and all that stuff, you obviously know the significance of doing such a thing. But nevertheless,
sex magic won't work at all, or maybe a little bit if you're ejaculating, basically.
Yeah,
it might work, but
but
you're gonna lose a lot of electricity and magnetism.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, if you have that built up, obviously your manifestations as well as your ability to do magic will obviously increase. So it's like, yeah, sure, you can definitely get an easy boost to get what you want, but it comes at a sacrifice, one that is not even necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, is it really worth it?
Right.
And yeah, sure, you'll feel good in the moment, but at what cost?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah. Well, we've covered just a tip of all the information, right?
Introduction.
Yeah. I'm really excited to like go into more depth in the future. And yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Be ready for part 2.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yep. It's gonna be a series of magic videos.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just, like they said, that this is just an introduction. Like, we haven't even covered all the basics yet either, and we're definitely going to get into even some of the cool stuff later. But of course, we need to know the basics, otherwise the advanced stuff would be kind of useless.
Yeah, gotta have a good foundation, right? As with anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess to kind of summarize, we go over. So be a mystic first before you become an occultist. Well, I mean, knowing what magic is definitely helpful, but if you made it this far, I'm assuming you probably know what it is anyway. How the mind works, so implanting things into the subconscious and making sure the conscious mind is not thinking about it for things to manifest. And of course, developing these vital skills of self-hypnosis, achieving that state of gnosis, focus and concentration, visualization, and meditation. So if you can get all these things down, you'll already be well on your way. Okay. And of course, and in the future, we're definitely going to cover things like hermetic laws, which are extremely vital. And as well as other things, as well as components of the spell. But anyways, just stay tuned for it then.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick. This is something that I've always been interested in. Same with astrology. I've always been interested in it. And it just came at a point where I had time to prioritize astrology, and I learned it. And at this point, I'm ready to prioritize the magic rituals and whatnot. So, it's going to be good.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. It's practical mysticism applied.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So now we truly learned how to tap into that divine power that we all innately have, as opposed to just.
It's pretty much just going into detail what some people already know, like well-off, wealthy people. They subconsciously already know, and they're already doing it because they probably inherited it from their past life. They just know all the rules, like don't whatever they are, to have a successful life and not get in the way of manifestation, and to be grateful. You see a lot of these wealthy people, they have great character and morals, and you can tell that they subconsciously just know, and they couldn't explain it really, but you can tell that they know how to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember even Christopher Campbell was saying in one of his lessons how, and I see it too, how like same thing with the axiom as above, so below, without, so within. All these things reverberate like throughout creation as well, and even within ourselves too. And you'll notice as well, like even like with wealthy people too, like one thing sometimes you'll see them a lot doing is they're always lighting like candles in their homes, like white candles, which is supposed to represent purity and clean. And white candles can be used. We can go over candle stuff in a future episode, but like they're always doing these tiny little things, even mindsets as well. Yeah. Even if they don't know why they're doing it, they know they do it because it works. Whether or not they're aware of it, that's why it works or why they're wealthy, that can be a different story. But and also most definitely, like, the Kabbalists, the people that run all these major corporations, even if the lower enlisted or the lower ranks may not know consciously themselves, but definitely the ones that are pulling the strings, they know the stuff. right? And they're definitely using it to their advantage as well.
Mm.
And unfortunately, even tricking most of us into partaking into and assisting them with it. And well, shit's everywhere, unfortunately. But
Yeah. And now we're going to take the reins, right? We're going to do our
Mhm.
own magic.
Power to the people, Age of
Yeah,
Aquarius. It's
yeah.
not about schools of fish. It's about the community.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for being with us. And we totally look forward to next time. I'm really excited to learn all that you have to share. And yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Get ready for part 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
At least part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part 3 and part 4.
Part 2 will be next. That's the next step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. You all have a lovely day. Many blessings and much love.